Ray tracing. Everyone was saying it would be the future of gaming. But has it really been that noteworthy? When Nvidia announced the RTX 20 series, it seemed like everything would change, and that there would be a distinct line in graphical fidelity between pre- and post-ray tracing games. And I'll admit, I was hooked on its premise. Who doesn't want games to look more realistic? But admittingly, besides fully path-traced games like Quake 2 RTX and Portal with RTX, and mostly path-traced games like Cyberpunk 2077 and Alan Wake 2, and even heavily ray-traced games without path-tracing like Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, the upgrades are rather minuscule. And even with the aforementioned games, not even they are perfect, and ray tracing even comes with its own inherent flaws, which some might argue are even worse than traditional rasterization. Yes, although I'm a sucker for ray tracing, even I'm willing to admit it's not a magical cure for all of video games' failings graphically. The thing that first caught my eye with ray tracing was when Nvidia showed that in Battlefield 5, reflections were no longer going to be screen space. But even Battlefield's implementation of ray tracing wasn't perfect. For instance, alpha effects were still screen space, so there was some discontinuity with the reflections in the game world. And of course, it ran horribly at the time, even though it was visually pretty bare bones and underwhelming all things considered. Obviously nowadays any modern GPU, even AMD ones, can run the game just fine with ray tracing. But when it first came out, only the highest end RTX cards could run it semi-competently, and AMD cards couldn't even run ray tracing at all. Now, one good quality to ray tracing is that it can add continuity to the game world through things like more accurate shadows, light bounces, or consistent reflections. These are honestly shown best off in Cyberpunk's path tracing mode. If you compare non-ray traced to fully path traced, you'd have to be blind to not see the difference in most cases. And you honestly might prefer the non-ray traced look, but path tracing objectively looks more accurate and consistent. But even this form of ray tracing has flaws. In this game and many other games with ray tracing, light bounces are delayed from when they occur and when it fully sets in on your screen. In Metro Exodus, for instance, if you walk from a room with little light to a room with a lot of light, it takes a couple of frames for the extra light to fully render, and in Cyberpunk, it takes time for the light change to fully settle in when the neon lights under one of the tunnels changes color. Even with the delay in light bounces, though, the end product is much more realistic when path traced, unless they were fully baked. But then, they wouldn't be dynamic, which is its own drawback. When I think of games that could have benefited from ray tracing, my mind quickly goes to Quantum Break. Mostly because I replayed that game during the time I got an RTX 2060, but also because the biggest flaw graphically with that game, at least in my mind, was the fact that reflective surfaces failed to show when they were out of screen space. It just always bothered me how when I looked down at one of the many building floors, the reflection disappeared. I've desperately wanted a remaster of that game with ray tracing ever since. But what are the negative aspects of ray tracing? Well, one thing that I touched on earlier is performance, especially with full-on path tracing like Cyberpunk and Portal with RTX, is that it can run horrendously without DLSS and frame generation. When I played Portal with RTX on my RTX 2080 Super, I literally had to run on near minimum settings and DLSS on ultra performance just to get usually 60 FPS at 1440p output. Besides the DLSS, it looked great, but I had to run it at such a low internal resolution that there were numerous moire patterns and barely legible text from long distances. And I definitely wouldn't have the horsepower to run Cyberpunk with path tracing, even on DLSS Ultra Performance. But luckily, I got an RTX 4070, so along with the extra horsepower, I can also use DLSS frame generation, so I can now barely get 60 FPS at 1440p with DLSS set to balance mode and frame generation enabled for Cyberpunk. But it looks so much better that I'm willing to bear the frame rate dips. So is ray tracing ruining video games? I don't think so. But hey, maybe you think that if ray tracing wasn't prioritized, that we would get more realistic forms of traditional rasterization that would look just as good and run better than ray tracing. But those are all hypotheticals. The truth is that we probably will never know what could have been. Only what there is, at least in respect to ray tracing in video games. And it is also about what you prioritize. If you, like me, prioritize graphics over high refresh, 100% consistent frame rates over 60, or incredibly responsive inputs, then ray tracing is a no-brainer. But if you like super high FPS, no dips below 60, you might rather not enabling ray tracing to ensure you get the experience you desire. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Do you think ray tracing is ruining video games? Do you think it's helping the medium, or do you think that it has an overall neutral effect on gaming? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. You can like if you like this video, subscribe if you like my content. You can also check out some of my content here. Have a great day, and see you next time.